Now, back to Steiny and Guru on 95.7 The Game.
All righty, let's get right to it. Bring in Ted Nguyen, NFL staff writer at The Athletic. You can check out his latest piece. It's on the Chiefs' defensive game plan, and Steve Spagnuolo. Check that out in The Athletic. Ted, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, listen, we know you're a big film guy and a tape guy. I guess here's where I'll start. Kittle only had 2 catches, and Ayuk only had 3, and Debo only. Were they open and Purdy didn't see them, or were they not getting separation? Is there any way to generalize maybe why the offense sputtered, or some of those guys sputtered a little bit in that Super Bowl?
Well, if you look at what the Chiefs have done all season, they have been the best team at taking away a team's number one receiver. And Steve Spagnuolo is just one of the best at being able to take away a number one, because he has so many different tools and schemes and strategies for taking away a number one receiver. You look at throughout the playoffs. They didn't consider Zay Flowers the number one, so they gave him a bunch of one-on-one coverage and they gave him some catches underneath. But other than that, they I don't have the stat in front of me, but before that game, the last 5 number ones, including Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, I think they only gave up 128 yards total to those guys in 5 games in a row. So he's just really good at taking number ones. They bracketed Ayuk. Sometimes they'll show a bracket and then they'll blitz. They just made it tough to get the ball to him. And they gave Deebo Samuel a bunch of one-on-one coverage. But then they had Trent McDuffie or Snead press him, and those 2 guys are, top of the league at what they do. And Deebo, as great as he is not really a downfield route running, intermediate deep ball type of receiver. And we saw that in the game. He wasn't able to win those one-on-ones consistently. So with press coverage, you can't get those screens to Deebo because the corners are right on you, right? So. They just made it tough to get the ball to Debo, and they doubled Ayuk. That's what they do all season. Some of the teams that had success against the Chiefs, they were able to get the ball to like their 3rd or 4th receivers or tight ends and running backs, and they just weren't. And Christian McCaffrey had 90 yards receiving. So that's the game plan that you should have coming into playing the Chiefs. But unfortunately, they didn't win in the red zone, and they had the turnover, and those things could do you in against a good elite defense.
Ted, I got like a million questions, but I know we got a short amount of time, and I'll start with this one. What would you say to the crowd that said Kyle should have ran McCaffrey more?
I think the Chiefs had a lot more success against the run than people realize, especially with their base personnel, which means just 4 defensive backs and some combination of 7 defensive linemen and linebackers. When they had their base defense on the field, in the first half, the Niners only had 5 carries for 11 yards. So the Chiefs had a good game plan against the Niners running game. They were able to create negative plays. They got the Niners into some long yardage situations on early downs that kind of forced them to pass. And really, the Niners' superpower all season has been, if you're going to put your base personnel on the field, we're going to punish you with explosive pass plays, because we have guys that can beat linebackers, and that's been their identity. That's been how they been putting up so many points against other teams. But against the Chiefs, they couldn't do it because the Chiefs have good matchup players as well.
Ted Nguyen joining us on 95.7 The Game. He's an NFL staff writer at The Athletic. You want to check out his stuff he wrote on the Super Bowl and the Chiefs' defensive game plan. I'm looking at the San Francisco 49ers, and obviously they just fired Steve Wilks. I'm going to ask you a question that you don't have to answer it if you want, but I bet if you ask Kyle Shanahan in his heart of hearts, do you think he wishes maybe that he would have gotten rid of Steve Wilks in the middle of the season? Because the breadcrumbs now seem to be leading us to, they weren't on the same page this year.
Yeah, but, also, I don't know if they have a guy that they felt good to be his replacement, because Steve Wilks does have a lot of experience in the league as a defensive coordinator, and I'm sure that they had some hope that they could have, eventually right the ship, too. So I think they wanted to give Wilks a chance to get things right, but unfortunately, they just never got on the same page.
Ted, let me ask you this about Brock Purdy. I told my partner Steiny here, I was shocked that he wasn't overwhelmed, didn't turn the ball over in this game. And all I hear about, because, Ted, I feel like the Niners let this one get away. We'll leave that there. But, when you're playing a Patrick Mahomes or some a quarterback of that caliber, they're heroic. Has anything changed in your estimation from a Brock Purdy standpoint that he could either not be Mahomes but be a championship quarterback moving forward?
No, I thought Brock played pretty well in the Super Bowl. I mean, again, this is an elite secondary. He played an elite defensive play caller that had a really good game plan. And, obviously there were some mistakes and there were some plays that he would love to have back. But I think, to me, that's where experience comes in. It's hard to – sometimes people forget he's in his second year. He hasn't seen a lot of football. He hasn't seen a lot of NFL football, and all these reps that he's having, he is being registered in his mind and is getting better. But there were some plays where I thought, experience is what would make the difference. Like, maybe he could have changed the protection. Maybe on that 3rd and 5 at the end of the game where they couldn't convert, if he told George Kittle to look towards the slot and he hit Ayuk on the hot route, that might have ended the game. But that's tough to see as a second-year player that's still learning and getting these reps. But now he has that in his bank, and he's going to build on that.
Ted Nguyen joining us on 95.7 The Game. He's an NFL writer for The Athletic. The overtime situation with the toss, just your feelings on Kyle taking the ball, the Chiefs apparently loving that they took the ball in that situation, and kind of the second guessing around that. How did you view it?
Yeah, I mean, to me, all the analysis that I've read on it, it's pretty much a 50-50 proposition, and you can make arguments for either strategy. And obviously the Chiefs believe in one strategy, and they kind of ingrained in their guys that this is the strategy that we want to go with. So they obviously believed in it, and they were ready to go, and we're very happy that the Niners chose the other strategy. But this is a brand new rule. It's a brand new format for overtime. So to me, it wasn't as egregious as people thought it was. And obviously the results were what it was, and it makes it worse. But to me, it's kind of a 50-50 proposition. I could see both sides of the argument. And to analyze that, we kind of have to not look at the results and kind of, I think we need more evidence to kind of steer which way it should go. But they made this rule so that it's more fair to whoever wins or loses the coin toss.
Ted, can you help me break this down? I just can't get over the 3rd and 5 from the 9 late in the 4th. I just thought a first down there. I know first down there. They bleed the clock, kick a field goal, Niners win the Super Bowl. So now I'm hearing and I'm reading a lot of people blaming the O-line collectively. But if the O-line is good enough to get you to this plateau, do you think, Ted, it's fair to say, okay, in the big game, it's cool for everybody to say we lost them the game? Or is it on Kyle? Is it on the O-line? A combination of both? How do you see that?
Well, it's definitely not the offensive line, because the guy that got in was Trent McDuffie, and he wasn't the offensive line's responsibility. George Kittle was in the backfield, and he was that extra blocker. And I don't know what he's taught, but maybe they thought a blitz was going to come from the slot to the opposite side, but it actually came from the wide side, which is where McDuffie came from. So in a perfect world, Kittle would block McDuffie. Or maybe Brock sees that blitz and he throws hot to Ayuk right away. But that's definitely not an offensive line. It's either on Kittle or it's on Brock to see it. It was a well-disguised defense because Spags hasn't called that before, and he brought that at the perfect time, and it kind of fooled the offense. But if you were to put blame on somebody, it would have to be Kittle or Purdy, not the offensive line.
Ted Nguyen joining us on 95.7 The Game. He covers the NFL for The Athletic. I mean, I think objectively, if we look at the San Francisco 49ers, Ted, they're going to look a lot similar next year to this year. It just kind of the way it plays out. Greenlaw maybe won't be there for the start of the season, but essentially the team's going to probably look like this past year. So how do they get better, and where do they need to improve the most in your mind?
To me, the secondary has to get a lot better. I thought they were a problem. Jimmy Ward leaving in free agency was obviously a huge problem because Lenore had to move in to play nickel when they had 5 defensive backs on the field, and obviously Aubrey Thomas got picked on relentlessly. I thought losing Hufanga was huge for this defense, especially the run defense, because Hufanga just created so many negative plays in the run game, and he was still good back there. They dealt with multiple injuries to the safety position. So I think they have to get deeper in the secondary. I think they need a nickel or outside corner so they could decide what spot they want to put Lenore into. But I thought the secondary was pretty bad this season.
Ted, I was telling my partner, I know football is a violent sport. No excuses. Everybody's got a story. But if you watch that first half up into the Greenlaw injury and Kelsey going crazy on his coach and the frustration that had set in, there's no way that injury didn't have a bearing on the outcome. With that said, going into next season, you know, what are the ramifications you think of that Greenlaw injury to this Niner defense, whoever the coordinator is?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, to me, Greenlaw is a top 10 linebacker, and you pair that with Fred Warner, who is either 1 or 2 in the league. You know, obviously the Niners don't have great depth there. I mean, Oren Burks got picked. I think he got targeted 9 times for 9 catches and over 100 yards. Or I don't have the stat in front of me, but I think it's something similar to that. So that injury is pretty big, and it's a huge part of the Niners' identity, having those 2 top-flight linebackers just chase everything down and take away the middle of the field. And then obviously Travis Kelce went off in the second half. So I think it was a huge injury. It's tough when you're starting to get to the point of the stage of development with the Niners where people are getting paid to have a lot of good depth because you're paying these top guys so much money. It's hard to build out that depth, and you really have to do it with the draft and with guys that other teams don't want. So you have to find these diamonds in the rough. And the Niners defense was pretty thin this year. We saw that play out. And then obviously you don't expect to lose a top flight linebacker just running on a field. But it was a very impactful injury.
Ted, are you done writing for a little while, or do you got something in the hopper that we can look for in the next day or two?
NFL news cycle is never done. So I'm writing about some of the coaching hires, about Luke Getsy, and then I'm going to write about Mike Zimmer's fit, and then I have to get into the draft and start really studying these guys and breaking down these draft prospects.
What do you think they'll do at defensive coordinator? Or thought process?
It's really tough at this point of the season because everybody is settled in with their positions and all that. But I think Mike Vrabel is an interesting name because I think he could cycle between. I think he could run a 4-down system. I think he's a really good strategist and good defensive mind. But maybe he's too buff for Kyle Shanahan to change his play calls. So maybe he won't fit in. Brandon Staley's an interesting name, but he's an odd front guy that doesn't really fit what the Niners are doing. But maybe if he can convince them that he could run the Niners single gap system and adjust, he could be a name to watch out for too. But anytime you have a guy that's switching schemes, they dealt with some of that with Steve Wilkes, it's going to be adjustment. And maybe Jeff Ulbrich, who is the Jets defensive coordinator right now, maybe you can convince him to want to come home to the Bay Area. He'd be a great name as well. So I'd watch out for those guys.
Ted, I gotta leave you. I know I gotta leave you with this one, Ted. For all the chatter, because it has got some fertilizer that says Kyle can't win the big one. Do you scoff at that, or do you say, you know what, everybody's entitled to their opinion? There's enough data to show that, or where are you at when you hear talk like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough to put the first Super Bowl on him when the offense scored so many points in that. When he was the Atlanta Falcons offense coordinator, when he was offense coordinator with the Falcons, and then I just think it's hard when you're in the Patrick Mahomes era. You know, it's like being in the Jordan era. All these guys that never became champions or never got the accolades they deserve because they were playing in the era of the greatest player of all time. We're seeing a similar situation with Patrick Mahomes, who is going to be in a running for the greatest quarterback of all time. I mean, it's tough to beat him, you know. So there were definitely some things that Kyle could have done better. But I think Andy Reid made a bunch of coaching mistakes too. But he had Patrick Mahomes on his side, which is the the great equalizer.
Hey, Ted, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it, and really like your stuff. You have great insight. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. Ted Wynn, NFL staff writer. You can follow him at The Athletic NFL.